Hey friends, and welcome to another episode of the U-Turn Podcast. This is your host, Ashley Stahl, and for those of you who don't know me, I'm a counterterrorism professional turned career and life coach, as well as a Forbes columnist and the founder of Cake Publishing Ghostwriting House. I created the U-Turn Podcast because, let's face it, every now and again, we wake up and realize our life has been going on autopilot and it's time to make a U-turn. So prepare to go deep with some of the most transformational people I know, whether it's best-selling authors, CEOs, coaches, professors, you name it, they're all here to help you grow and upgrade your life, whether it's in work, whether it's in love, or your mindset. So make sure you stay tuned for the end of every episode where I reflect on the conversation and offer you actionable coaching insights to have an impact on your life. Now let's get started with this week's guest. It's Ash. I'm here with Selena Soo, and she is such an incredible expert on personal branding, how to build effective relationships that elevate your career and your business. Selena, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming. We've had this on the calendar, and I'm so excited because I know you're really a genius at relationships, and that's why for those of you listening, we decided to talk about how to build relationships with people that can actually help you. So I know you have 5 key points, but before we get into those, what is your story or what got you into this place where you are just such a ninja relationship builder?
Thank you. So it began in my mid-20s when I had a quarter life crisis, and I was working at a nonprofit making about $40,000 a year. And while it was, I was in a way working my dream job, on the inside I was just falling apart. I had really low self-esteem and self-worth issues, and I discovered this women's life coaching group. And so I joined this group. We would meet like every Wednesday night, sit around in a circle, and I got exposed to all of these different books from thought leaders like Deepak Chopra, Marianne Williamson, Louise Hay, and I just thought, wow, these people are so amazing, because, through these books and through other entrepreneurs like Marie Forleo and Ramit Sethi, I realized, that when people are suffering and in pain, they're not just looking for more information, they're looking for inspiration. And I was really inspired by these role models who embody this message of possibility, that you can create a better life for yourself, that you can leave a toxic relationship, heal your health, find your dream job, start a business or a side hustle. And so I've always been really passionate about people who have a powerful message. And so I've always loved to connect those people, because I love to, help those people who feel like a hidden gem become a household name in their industry. So I just kind of became this natural connector because I wanted to be helpful. I wanted more people to know about these incredible people. And that kind of leads me to where I am today. I've had my business for about 6 years now and built, a really substantial business. I came from, making about $40,000 a year working at a nonprofit. So yeah, I love what I do. And I feel like connecting with influencers is a key part of what I do and what I help others with.
Amazing. And we are cut from the same cloth. It's so interesting because you're mostly helping entrepreneurs get out there with their brand, whereas I'm helping job seekers get the job, which is really all the same. What do you think are some of the common blocks, that stop people from building relationships that can really help them?
Yeah, no, that's a really great place to start. So, oftentimes when we're looking to build relationships with people, and we think about the people we admire, we put them on this pedestal. And, it's not that, you're not supposed to look up to people, but at the same time, when you put someone on a pedestal, naturally they start looking down on you, right? And oftentimes there's this kind of inner kind of monologue going on where you're like, oh my gosh, who am I to think I could approach this person? They're so much more successful than me. They've got everything. What would they need me for? I've got nothing. I don't want to waste their time. And when we have that mindset and we approach people thinking that we're wasting their time and have nothing to offer, it makes it really difficult to build an authentic relationship. And the thing is that all of us have value to add as human beings. And there's so many different ways to do that. And so one of my favorite things is helping people find creative ways to add value and stand out. And that's really how you level the playing field in your mind when you feel like I've got nothing to offer. Who am I to talk to this person? Can I really connect with them? Because when you start becoming this helpful person and contributing to them, you are creating value in the world. And so, yeah, that is really the biggest secret to connect with busy people, because, and even if we look at kind of what it's like for each of us, right? There are hundreds, thousands of people we know. I mean, we probably have, hundreds, thousands of Facebook contacts, but there's, a much smaller group of people that we actually stay in touch with, that we're close to, that we support, that we care about. And so everyone is in our life because they add value to us in some way or another. And it's not like something that's overly transactional, but think about it. Like, your best friend is probably someone who is just such a great listener, or makes you laugh, or you just feel like you can be yourself around them. Whatever it is, like, that person is adding value to you in some way. And so I love helping people figure out, okay, how can I be more valuable to the people around me?
And what a beautiful way to enter into networking, for lack of a better term, because that is building relationships, is coming in with a mindset of like, how do I add value? And I'm on the same page as you, Selena. I'm possessed by it. Like, the moment I see a person walk into the room, my head is already like, especially somebody I want to talk to, I'm like, I will not even step foot in front of them until I am clear how I'm ready to add value to them.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. And I really think it's such a lifestyle. It's not like, okay, I do this once. It's just, it's a mindset and a lifestyle.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm noticing though, Selena, I mean, you're pretty polished, you're pretty well spoken. Obviously you built a business around it, but not all of us, have a way of being where our words just come out so beautifully. Are there any suggestions you have for somebody, as they're entering into this world of building relationships with people that can help them? Any shifts you can help them so that they can speak more effectively or dazzle people more authentically?
It's so funny that you say that, because I used to be so terrified of public speaking. And before I started my business, I was in business school. And we would get into groups sometimes for projects, and would have to go around and introduce ourselves, maybe share what we, want to do after school. And like the whole time I would like just be in my own head, like mentally rehearsing like the 15-second thing I was going to say. I just was so uncomfortable being seen and talking. And I remember when I started my business, I did my first interview. A client wanted to share my work with her audience. I had so many filler words, and I had my interns count, because I was also, in Toastmasters at the time, and there were literally like 137 filler words, and it was so embarrassing, and I really didn't want to release the interview.
When you say filler words, do you mean like or
Yeah,
okay.
So, and all those things make it sound like you're lacking in confidence in some way and sounding less polished. So that's actually how I used to talk in general. And I think I've just become more mindful of that. I mean, the way that you get better with public speaking is by doing it a lot. And it's been something that I've been working on for so many years, but more intensively as a business owner, because a big part of my business has been, doing webinars and podcast interviews and things like that. So it comes with a lot of practice. But before that, I would occasionally get some public speaking coaching, or just kind of once in a while, try to work on it. But sometimes I feel like kind of like fully immersing yourself is the way to do it. So I think that for everyone listening, think about ways, what are like opportunities for you to present more. Maybe there's a leadership role that you can take on at work, or maybe there are, leadership, or just different meetings that you can lead, but just find opportunities to practice speaking more. And also get feedback, because I also learned a lot of things about how I would present myself. So initially, like, I was not smiling at all, and in my head I thought I was smiling.
Oh, no. Do you have like resting bitch face by accident?
Yeah, or just like, and I kind of seemed like unhappy, but I wasn't.
Oh no! I used to have that at the Pentagon, but I think I was actually unhappy, so maybe that's a different thing.
Right. Well, and even if you are unhappy, you got to cover it up with a smile. And so there are things like that. And when I used to do interviews, my eyes would dart, and I'm so, I'm naturally very introverted, so I kind of like, I'm kind of in my head, and, it just looks like I'm not engaged. So anyways, I got like a lot of feedback. I mean, I was watching like video recordings of myself, so I was like hearing my filler words and all of that. So yeah, I mean, the only way that you get better is, by practicing, because you can read books and theories and things like that, but you have to do it to get better. So it wasn't overnight. It was a process. And I'm really honored that you're saying that I'm polished and eloquent, because that was not where I started at all.
Girl, I used to work in counterterrorism. You sound like you straight out the White House. But you know, you actually had a really good point that I want to just bring forward. And I'm actually surprised now that I've done so many interviews that nobody's mentioned this. And it's that you went to Toastmasters. And what an amazing resource. I've written about it to my email subscribers, but I've never brought it up on this podcast. So those of you listening, whether you know about it or you don't, Toastmasters chapters are all over the United States. Are they all over the world, Selena, internationally?
I think they're all over the world. Yeah. I believe it's an international organization.
And it's cheap. It's not expensive. What is it?
Yeah.
It's like $30 to $100 to join, and you have weekly meetings, and there's a group of people, and you can also try different chapters on. So if you Google your local Toastmaster chapters, you can try on different groups and see which one resonates for you. And it's a weekly meeting, and there's no pressure, I don't think, to go to every single week if you don't want to. But obviously, if you want to commit to your speaking skills, like Selena did, what an amazing opportunity in a non-threatening group of people to actually improve how you step up. And I'm so sure that if you go into something like that, your confidence is going to shine in so many other areas of your life.
Yes.
Amazing. That was a mouthful. So your first step was creating an influencer list as a way to build relationships with people. So can you talk to me a little bit about A, how that's played a role in your life, and just B, like what can anyone listening start to do as it relates to that?
Absolutely. So when it comes to, advancing in your career or achieving your goal, any kind of goal that you have, it's always, there's going to be someone who can open up that door for you, someone who's going to say yes to you and give you an opportunity. So with everything that you want, it comes down to a person giving you that opportunity. People will say like, who are my influencers? Who should be on my influencer list? And oftentimes, when you hear the word influencer, you think like Instagram influencer, you think like Oprah Winfrey or Richard Branson. And the thing is, we each want to have our own customized influencer list. And my definition of influencer is somebody who can help you reach your goals faster. So, you have to first get clear on what your goals are. So maybe you want to get better at negotiating your salary or getting a promotion at work, or you want to go into a totally new industry or start a side hustle or write a book. Whatever it is, you've got this goal, and there are people who can help you achieve that goal. And there's different types of influencers. I mean, some, kind of more well-known influencers may be like the experts and leaders in your field who write books and things like that. But they could also be a colleague at work who is a couple of steps ahead of you. It could be someone who is more of a mentor figure, whether informal or formal. Influencers can also be your super fans and cheerleaders. One of my kind of pet peeves is when I hear people say, like, I don't want to be a fangirl. And I do know where they're coming from. Like, they don't want to come off with that desperate energy. But the truth is, like, I'm a fan of so many people. I'm a fan of all my mentors. I'm a fan of, some of my students and clients and the people in my world. And, influencers aren't just kind of people who are out of reach. They're also people who are by our side, who are cheering us on, who want to lift us up to the next level. And when we're looking to grow in our career, you want people who have great things to say about you, who believe in you, who are endorsing you and things like that. So never forget kind of your super fans and cheerleaders. And so, make a list of those people. Also, another type of influencer is a super connector. That's something that I am, because one of my absolute favorite things is connecting people to different opportunities and people. And it comes really naturally to me. And so, and I think that, some of these super connectors are sometimes under the radar, but yet they're making magic happen behind the scenes. So think about your goal and think about some of these different types of influencers that I mentioned, super fans, super connectors, mentors, colleagues who are a couple of steps ahead, experts, and add those people to your influencer list.
Amazing. And once you're, let's say you're building your influencer list, I still couldn't help but feel my own heart kind of close when it was like, okay, people that can help you reach your goals, because I know so many people have the judgment of taking still. So even though it's about how can I add value, are there any other mindset hacks you have as people are building this list? Because I imagine as I grab my pen out and I start putting people's names down, there's that, that everyday person who's writing this down,
right.
They're probably feeling like, oh my gosh, like, fraud syndrome. Like, how do you get over feeling like a fraud?
Like, am I ridiculous to put this person's name down, or am I even, entitled to like connect with this person in a meaningful way? I mean, right now, for this phase, like, don't overly judge or censor yourself. If you've got this goal and there are these people that are coming up for you who inspire you, that make you feel like excited, put their names down on the influencer list. Doesn't mean you have to reach out to them right away. There may be a certain order that you approach these influencers, but just put their names down. And I recommend that people have about 20 people on their influencer list, maybe a little more. You don't want to just have 3 people, because that's a lot of pressure. And there may be people you reach out to that you don't hear back. It's better to have a more expansive influencer list. So 20 is good. And then, the other thing is sometimes we, and I'm this kind of person, like, I'm a big planner. I kind of like to know how things will unfold. Right now, just put their names down. You don't need to figure out like how you would add value or how you're going to find them, or, how you could get them to support you. Just put the names of those people down. Just have a long list of people that are maybe even feel out of reach, and also people who are kind of like, what I call lower hanging fruit, people who are more accessible to you.
I love that. And I also found it really interesting, like, you can do this for different goals. This doesn't have to be like for your entire career. It could be some piece of your career that you're working on, if it's salary negotiation or if it's trying to figure out what you want to do with your life. But I know, Selena, you're paid well for what you do. In my coaching practice, in my online courses, I'm paid for what I do. So there's that fine line between honoring what you do and supporting other people. So how do you recommend people approach someone who really is a high value person in their career? They bill for their time in some area.
Right.
How do you navigate reaching out to somebody in a way that inspires them to want to respond?
Yeah, I love this question. And, whenever I reach out to anybody, I just assume that they're an extremely busy person that has no time. And even reading my email is something that is kind of on their to-do list. I think that, when you reach out to people, you want to put yourself in someone else's shoes. And it's very common that there are people that we admire. I mean, I'm sure that there are, I know there are hundreds of thousands of people that admire the work that you do, Ashley. And, people may feel like whether it's you or someone else, that they know them so well. Maybe they listen to all their podcast interviews or on their newsletter. And the mistake that people have made, including myself before, is, we meet these people that we admire so much. And when we approach them, it's like a monologue, where we just talk about ourselves. I've been guilty of this. Because we're so nervous and we're like, it feels like we've got this one shot and we want to impress them. Or other times, it's in the form of an email where they're writing like an 11 paragraph email. But when that happens, well, one, it's not natural, because think about how you talk with a friend or how you email with a friend, you may be texting them, it's back and forth, you pause because the person's not going anywhere and you just feel at ease. But oftentimes we come into these relationships feeling nervous and afraid of rejection to the point that we're in our head and we're not really authentically communicating.
Okay, so what would be the next step? Doing your research. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so step number 1 is you kind of define who your influencers are. Step number 2 is to do your research on them. The thing is, every person's favorite topic is themselves. I remember when I was at a speaking event, it was the American Women's Business Association, and it was a crowd that I just wasn't as familiar with. And at the end of my talk, someone came up to me and said, "I'm on your email list." And all of a sudden, that person was the most fascinating person in the room to me. I was like, oh my gosh, wow, you're on my email list. How did you find out about me? And it's just the way it is. We are interested in ourselves and topics connected to us. Mm-hmm. And so, whenever you're connecting with someone, you want to find something you have in common with them. And it may be that, you greatly appreciate their work that's had an impact on your life. Maybe you go onto LinkedIn or social media, you see that you've got mutual friends, or you grew up in the same town, or you have a similar hobby. But when you reach out to someone, if someone doesn't know you, everyone's going to have their guard up a little bit. But if people feel like, you're familiar with them, you've been paying attention to them, you're creating like these connection points that feel meaningful, that's going to make it easier to build the connection. And the third part of this kind of process to developing relationships with influencers is to add value. But you have to do that research to understand what kind of value you could add to someone's life.
I've had the same experience where people, if I'm like at a coffee shop and they come over and they say, I'm on your email list. And I'm like, no way. But I also think it offers immediate connection, right? Like, it's not just about me. It's like, oh my God, this person sees me. They understand me. And like you feel yourself soften, because it's quite disarming for other people to look at you like they understand you. What are some conversational tools? Because let's assume that it's not always happening in a cold email. Like, maybe there's a few people on somebody's influencer list and they're going to a conference or they're going to work and the person's there. What are some conversational tools if somebody's done their research and they're wanting to offer value? Like, what are some things that they can say to be charming, intentionally, authentically? Not like slimy charming, but
absolutely. Yeah. So if you're going to an event, maybe there's a speaker there. One of the things that you could say is, I loved your talk. I loved your story about, and then fill in the blank, or you're such an amazing speaker. For me, as someone who used to be so terrified of public speaking, whenever someone would say like, oh my gosh, you were so great on stage, you're such an amazing speaker, I would be like, oh my God, you're my favorite person, because, I used to worry so much about messing up. So that's one thing that you can say, if it's genuine. Another thing I've had people say to me before are things like, and this is interesting because you wouldn't expect that this would be a great way to build a connection, but someone said to me, I admire you so much. I'm actually so nervous to talk to you. And immediately, like, me or whoever is going to say like, oh, don't be nervous. Like, and like, I'm so, honored that you're here. And, or if you tell someone, I saw that you were speaking at this event and that's the reason why I came, why I traveled, across the country or, all the way here. So those things I think really stand out. I mean, sometimes when there's like a little bit of vulnerability and, oftentimes when people are looking to build connections with people, we kind of have our guard up a little bit and we're like, how do I make myself look really impressive so that they want to get to know me better? And the thing is that, there's a saying that, if a cup is full, you can't add any water, right? There has to be some kind of, opening, right, to receive. And so when we act like we've got everything together and it's just kind of one-way dialogue, nowhere to really, for anyone to say anything, then it, prevent someone from helping you. So I think, one of the reasons why I've built meaningful relationships with people is, one, people can see that, I'm passionate what I'm doing. I've had, a certain amount of success, but I'm also very open and honest about where I'm struggling and where I need help. And people can relate to that because the truth is everyone is, got a challenge in their life. When you share your vulnerabilities, people are able to see a piece of themselves in you and it makes them feel more compelled to help you. So sometimes just being really genuine about kind of admiring a person or needing help can be a great opening to developing a relationship.
Well, and I think there's also a middle ground, Selena, right? Because yes, the person who's inspired by you, who traveled for you, like that's all very flattering, but it also somewhat puts a distance between you on a pedestal and them coming for you. And yes, we don't want to, and it works. It's interesting. It's inspiring when somebody says something really kind. But I would think as the speaker, you're still, even if you're kind and you're like, don't be nervous, it still kind of feels like there's a separation between you two in that way. And I almost wonder, is there something somebody can do to step up even more empowered? Like saying something like, hey, this is the business that I'm in, and there's a couple people in my business that I would think would be great for you to connect with. Like leading with value right away. Like, I loved your talk. This is, the badassery that I'm up to, and I want to offer you value. Do you feel like, has that ever happened for you, or what do you think of that angle?
Yeah, I think that could be really great. And that, goes hand in hand with like the research piece and paying attention because you want to get a sense of what the person's goals are. Like, I mean, on the one hand, you can also figure it out. If someone is a speaker, if someone is an expert, an author, there are certain things that are naturally going to be important to them. And so you may have ideas of who you can connect them to. Like they're looking to grow their business, get more publicity, connect with the right people. So you can certainly offer that. I think that, I like the idea of offering value right away. One thing that they'll want to do, or, we all want to do is just make sure that we share some credibility markers about ourselves.
Yes, that's what I was getting at. Exactly.
Okay, good. Yeah. Because sometimes people have said to me, like, oh, do you want me to introduce you to so-and-so, or I can do this and that for you? But then I don't know, like, do they even have a relationship with so-and-so? Or, they're offering help, but would they be the right person to help me? So having something to kind of back you up, like your credentials, and then making the offer to help would be a lot more effective.
Wonderful. And this brings me to taking this even deeper, which is like what qualifies as like a good credibility, because we live in a world like, is it the university you went to? Is it the job you have, the title of your company, your role? Like, what are some things that you think people respond really well to for a credibility marker?
Yeah, so I think that people are less interested in like what college you went to unless it's the same college as them, because then they feel like that,
but even
kinship.
Then, that's powerful, right? Like, right, I'm an alumni too.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But like, let's say if you're offering to be helpful, whether it's like, oh, I could take photos at your next event, or I have, some awesome people to connect you to, it would be, the credibility marker would be connected to the way that you're offering value. So if you're saying, you've got awesome people to connect them to, maybe you would share like, I, run this annual conference where I work with incredible speakers like X, Y, and Z, and I would love to connect you to them. Because then they're like, okay, like, you have like a, meaningful relationship with those people. Or if you're a photographer, maybe you share awards you've won, or you've done this for a lot of events, or something connected to that skill.
And this is also just getting me to think of like, what are some things that you should really steer clear of when you're walking up to a speaker or somebody at work that you admire? Like, are there a few things after you've done your research and you're ready to add value as you're about to enter into a conversation, if it's not on an email, that is like, oh my gosh, avoid it at all costs. Like, don't say this. Hey U-Turners, so sorry for the quick interruption, but I want to make sure you know that this episode is brought to you by the Job Offer Academy, the e-course to help you land a new job you love. So if you're sick of applying for jobs and never hearing back, head on over to jobofferacademy.com. Now back to this week's episode.
Yeah, I would say like, don't say anything negative or controversial, just because when someone's at an event as a speaker, they need to be, on, and there are, hundreds of people that are looking at them and wanting their attention. So, you don't want to throw them off. Like, I've hosted events before where, there'll be that one person who's like really negative about things, like just find something to be negative about. And my team will like make sure to kind of shield me from that person and have someone else talk to them. You're like, I want to talk to Selena. And it's like, no, Selena needs to be kind of, they won't say that, but like, I need to be on because I need to be there for like the 300 other people. So, that's one thing, positive, don't be negative or like debate things with them that may leave them not feeling great. And then I think the other thing is just recognizing that, when someone is at an event, they're expending a lot of energy. Maybe they were speaking on stage, or there are, 20 people trying to talk to them at the same time. So if you do get into a conversation, that's great. And sometimes we can feel like, wow, it feels good to be talking to them for a long time and it's like such a win. But even if they're being pleasant and smiling, like they're going to want to talk to other people, or they feel other people like waiting for them. So just kind of keep your conversation succinct. Don't feel like it needs to be like full like 30-minute conversation. You can always follow up with people later. But just kind of being aware that there's other people looking to speak to that person is a way of being respectful.
Yeah. Somebody once told me, every word you say is either adding value or taking up space. And it has really shifted how I connect and communicate with people. And I think this is when it's the most relevant, is when you walk up to somebody. It's far too often, and I've had this experience, Selena, as well, speaking, and it happened actually last weekend. I spoke to a crowd of 80 or 100 entrepreneurs about webinars and, of all things. And a lot of them, I found somebody come up to me at the end, because I also talked about being a career coach and millennials and having a job hunting course and having sold it on a webinar. And so many different women got in line to talk to me, and I looked at the clock and I was like, dang, I have to leave in a half hour. And one girl kind of did what you're talking about. Like, she stationed, and energetically, when you can feel somebody getting comfortable for like the long haul, like, oh, this is going to be a big conversation and I don't have the time, and you get kind of nervous. Like, how am I going to gracefully, kindly, with class, close the conversation so that I could keep engaging in the world the way I have to be here.
Right.
And so I think one of the most common mistakes I've seen is people wanting so deeply, and maybe it's anxiety or fear, some sort of deep-rooted question that they feel like that expert can answer for them, and they feel like now is that time to get it answered. So kind of just following up on what you're saying is, like, if you're ever trying to talk to somebody that you are inspired by, making sure that your questions are not something that is so personal that there needs to be like a whole ton of detail, because then you're burning the bridge versus building one,
Yeah, I agree.
And I'm sure that's happened to you plenty of times, but on the most part, people are really lovely, and, everybody means well. Okay, so what's your next step after offering value and doing your research, creating the list? What's next?
Okay, so step number 4 is staying in touch. So, when you meet these incredible people and you build your network, whether it's, experts you admire from afar, or even colleagues and people in your industry, people at work, you want to maintain that relationship. So there's different ways to stay in touch with people. When you go to an event, I think it's a really good practice to, add everyone on LinkedIn or on Facebook if that feels, for Facebook if that feels appropriate. And then just sending them a little note to stay in touch, or maybe even like taking a picture of you two together and like texting it to the other person, but some other kind of touch point like afterwards to stay in touch. And another thing that I love to do is I love to organize events that bring people together. So I often do these like influencer and media mixers in New York City, and I co-host it with a friend who's also just really passionate about connecting people. And we each invite, interesting people, and then we ask those guests to, like, next time, recommend their friends. And it's a great way to stay in touch with people because it's hard, like, if you're meeting lots of people to have kind of one-on-one conversations with them consistently. But if you can create an event where you bring together 20 people and you're getting to reconnect with all of them, and you're creating that greater value by bringing them all together, that's like a powerful way to show up as a leader and really nurture those relationships. And I mean, there's so many ways to do it. I mean, you could organize like a brunch on a Sunday, with like a small group of like 6 people, or it could be, after work drinks, or it could even be, getting involved in like some awesome cause or fundraiser. But I'm always thinking about, how can I stay in touch with my contacts and my relationships and really, cultivate them.
I love that. And it's something that I think is really accessible for anybody to be doing, no matter where you're at in your career, is if you really think about it, you probably know at least a very small handful of people who are of influence in their career. And it could be a really amazing idea to just invite them all, saying that you're doing a dinner of people that you think have a really inspiring career, and you wanted to invite them and make them feel special. That's amazing. What this makes me think of, Selena, is kind of like business in general. There's always the companies that have the money, and then there's the companies that put the deal together. Right? And it's kind of essentially what you're talking about is, the people who put the deals together, they're geniuses at it. If they are, they're hustling, they're building relationships. And because of them, whatever the money that the people who have money have, it's going to expand. It's going to increase because they know how to put a good deal together. I think that's kind of like networking. It's like, maybe you're somebody right now that doesn't have a big network, but if you can start putting your network together, like really drawing on those inspiring people, and expand from there, I think, just what an amazing idea. I love it. Anything else to add to that?
Well, yeah, I do. So at these networking events, one of the things that I love to do is have people go around and share, 2 things. One is something that they're really excited about and proud of. A lot of people are not naturally going to brag about themselves, but when you give them that permission, like, everyone has to share something really, that they're excited about, something that's big in their world, something that they're proud of, then people are kind of, people feel good sharing it, and people are seeing like the best of someone. And it can also give people an idea of how they could be helpful. And then the other question, I love to ask people is, how can we help you? And usually people aren't always asked that so directly. And I tell people, like, just say the first thing that comes to your mind. It could be, I'm looking for a boyfriend. It could be, I'm looking to reduce my anxiety, whatever it is. Because, when you know just so kind of straightforwardly what someone needs help with, and it's easy to help someone.
I love that. And you were saying stay in touch, but there's also the art of following up, right? So
yeah.
How do you recommend gracefully following up? Because I know that there's that fine line where we all kind of walk, where it's like we're gracefully following up and then we become a nag. How do you walk that?
Yeah, sure. So a lot of people, are busy and they don't have time to, kind of get on follow-up calls and things like that. So I think the best way to follow up is really kind of like no strings attached. Just being like, it was so awesome meeting you. I'm excited to stay connected and, hope to see you at the next event or whatever it is. We're going to be offering a way that you could be helpful, or I'm going to check out that book that you recommended, but like kind of a personal note to show that you were paying attention. Maybe it's just like connecting with them on LinkedIn or sending them a quick note or sending them a text message or whatever it is. So you have each other's contact information. You're just following up in a way where the person feels like appreciated. They're like, oh, wow, this person took the time because they care about the relationship. But it's not like following up being like, oh, let's get on a call. I mean, sometimes, if you did have a really great conversation, you get the sense that it would be beneficial for both of you to continue the conversation, that there were things that were left unfinished, then absolutely. But, it's not like, you need to, like, the person is going anywhere. And also, one way that we kind of stay in touch, or I've stayed in touch with people, is even just like my presence on social media. When you connect with people on social media, when you're posting regularly, like, people see what's going on. Like, I was at a party the other night and some people were like, wow, I saw your photos in the Bahamas, or I saw your pictures from your most recent photo shoot. And I wasn't individually conversing with them, but I was sharing what was happening in my world online. And therefore, people knew what was happening.
So interesting. And, I think often about staying in touch with people, and you said maybe, adding people on LinkedIn. And I know, as a career coach, this is definitely not my first time talking about LinkedIn. It's such a sacred, networking space. But how do you suggest people do that? Because let's say you're at an event or you're, at work and maybe you don't know their last name, or like, what is a smooth way? Because I would suggest just being like, hey, let's connect on LinkedIn before you go, and finding them. But is that awkward? Like, what would you suggest?
Yeah, I mean, let's see. So if you're talking to someone at an event and, I think oftentimes people will be like, oh, do you have a card? Or, what's your last name? I would love to stay in touch on LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. I think that's perfectly fine to ask. Mm-hmm. Sometimes when at events, I and other people will even take like photos of each other's like name badges, as a way to like remember who we were just talking to. And it can be helpful to have like a little notebook in your bag to just like jot down people's names or notes that you want to remember, like after you finish talking to them. Or, maybe if they give you a business card, if it's blank at the back, you could write like a note or two just, so that you remember some of those details.
Mm-hmm. And then the final step you had was ask for help. And I can feel anybody who's listening being like, oh, how do I do that part? So what is your genius?
This is so nerve-wracking for people. So this is assuming that you followed all the other steps and you have created value for the person that you've been following up and just been a helpful, positive person in their world. So the thing is, all of us need help, but it can feel so scary to ask. We're afraid to offend the other person, to make the other person feel like we're using them. But the truth is that there's this cycle, right, of giving and receiving. When you give, it's natural for someone to want to give back to you. It actually feels fulfilling. And so, but the thing is knowing what you can ask for. So there's this technique that my mentor, Ramit Sethi, refers to as the straitjacket technique. And just imagine yourself, in a straitjacket, really like forcing yourself for like 30 seconds to be in this other person's shoes. And, when you want to make a request, think about how is that going to land for them? Is it something that's going to be easy for them to fulfill, or is it going to be something that feels uncomfortable? As something you think might make them uncomfortable, then I would kind of be careful about that. One of the things that I do when I am making asks, I try to make it light and give people an easy way out. So I may even be like, I'll say something like, hey, I just want to run an idea by you. I was thinking, X, Y, and Z. Like, so it could be like, I just wanted to run an idea by you. I'm hosting an event coming up, and, I know that my audience loves your work so much. I was wondering if you would like to speak at my event, and kind of share about like what's in it for them. Like, I think this would be really good because I know that you have a book coming out soon. A lot of people in the audience are people with, email lists and great social media following. They could totally see them getting behind your book. Let me know something that you'd be interested in. And there's different types of asks we might make, whether it is asking for an introduction, asking for like an endorsement on LinkedIn or something else. Oftentimes, another tip I have is to ask for advice versus big favors. So like, let's say you are looking to grow your brand, right? And you're looking to write for like Forbes, and you have a colleague who has written for Forbes. Rather than saying, hey, can you give me your Forbes contact? Or hey, can you introduce me to the head editor there? It'd be better to ask for advice. So that would look like, hey, I really, I'm so impressed like that you're writing for Forbes. Like I loved your most recent article, and it's actually on my wish list to be doing, more guest posting. And I was wondering if you could give me any advice, on how to get that kind of opportunity, because that will then get someone talking. And then maybe you could even, if you feel comfortable saying something like, okay, I'm going to put together a pitch. Would you mind taking a look at the pitch before I send it? Like, totally understand if you don't have time. And the person says yes, that's awesome. And so then your pitch will be in much better shape to, send to the media. And there's a chance that they read your pitch and they're like, oh my gosh, this is so great. Let me just forward this to my editor. So those are some ways to make asks without, kind of asking for something really big that makes someone uncomfortable right away.
I love that. And I know that there's so much expertise you have on how people can create a personal brand that gives them even more credibility, whether you're, somebody, a working professional or an entrepreneur. What would you say is one or two things that somebody can do right now or consider right now putting effort towards in their life to build a stronger personal brand that people that don't know them would trust them more?
Yeah, absolutely. So, all of us have our superpowers, and we want to get really clear on what we want to be known for. And so one of my mentors refers to this as like our front of the house superpowers and our back of the house superpowers. So for me, I'm someone who's like very organized. I plan in advance. I really love structure, and that's helped me become really successful in my business. But that's kind of more of like a back of the house superpower that I have in my back pocket, but it's not something I really advertise. But the thing that I'm known for that I'm also like really passionate about, which is a front of the house superpower, is being that super connector, building relationships with really hard to reach people, connecting people to opportunities and things like that. So as humans, there's so many things that we're good at, but with a personal brand, we don't want to, share like 7 different ideas because it's hard for someone to remember you. You want to develop a reputation as a go-to person for something, who is highly skilled at certain things. And so you have to be intentional about what you want to be known for.
Amazing. And let's say, you get clear, like I want to be known for, let's say you're a professional in marketing. You want to be known for having innovative ideas in marketing. What are a couple ways that you could put yourself out there? I mean, I guess it's a funny example because I'm doing a marketing person. They should know.
Right.
But it's so ironic. But what would be a couple things that are maybe outside of the typical box or mindset that everyone would have right now that they could start doing to create a stronger personal brand and identity?
Yeah. So if you want to be known as being someone who is innovative, creative, and thinking out of the box, I mean, one of the most powerful things is to have somebody else say those things about you, because it's one thing for you to tell the world, oh, I'm so great at this, but it's another thing for someone who is influential to say that. So do you have mentors, supervisors, colleagues, friends who could write a LinkedIn recommendation. Oftentimes when people say to me, Selena, can you write an endorsement for me? Can you give me a testimonial? I'll always ask them, well, what do you want me to say? What do you want me to touch on? Like, are there some main points you want me to get across? And so have those things ready for people. Obviously, it's going to be in their own words, but you could even give them some bullet points and say, I really want to emphasize this, or this is like a possible idea you could include, or, and give them examples. So that can help you get testimonials that really build your personal brand. So that's one thing. Another thing is guest posting. Whether you start your own blog where you're writing about your thoughts on marketing, or maybe you are writing for an industry blog, and it could be, writing about like a marketing campaign that you did and the biggest lessons, or you could be, critiquing like some of the most innovative campaigns of the year. So that's something that you could do. You could also be doing, speaking events and create a signature talk that really highlights your superpower. So those are 3 things that someone could do to really, build their personal brand around their superpower.
Amazing. And I think that for a lot of people posting online, it's kind of an enigma. I know, I write for Forbes. I'm sure you've done so many posts, Selena. What would be some things to consider for somebody who is that marketing professional or that counterterrorism professional or whatever their job is, that could get started? Because I think the idea of publishing online, it feels kind of nebulous. Like, what are a few logistical steps somebody could take?
Yeah, I think the way to get started, the easiest thing is to get testimonials, because there are people in our world who appreciate our work, and we just need to kind of ask them to offer that testimonial. So I would start there. But then in terms of writing, I think that, sometimes we just don't know what to write about. So think about like, what are some common questions that people have, when it comes to your area of expertise? What are some areas where they're feeling challenged, or things that they're confused by? Or is there, if you're a thought leader, like what is, something that you want to be known for, coming up with your expert topics, so for me, some of my expert topics are, around networking and publicity, and I write a lot about those. But you could even, pose it like if you, for me, I, will post on Facebook sometimes and get people's opinions on things. And so someone could say like, I'm looking to do more writing about my work around marketing and innovation. Are there any questions you have, or what would you like to hear more about from me? But you can just kind of start having conversations with people to get feedback on what they would be most interested in.
And I loved your suggestion for the marketing professional of positioning themselves online and posting an article about like the top 4 marketing campaigns of the year, because that is such an incredible authoritative stance to be taking as someone in the workforce. And I think it's an immediate positioner. So let's say, John Doe has never posted online. Would the first thing be like figuring out what platform to publish and like who the editor is, or what would you recommend he do to get started?
Yeah, well, actually, as you were talking, I just got an idea. So sometimes it doesn't even have to be pieces that we've written. Maybe on social media and on Twitter, we are sharing articles other experts have written about our area of expertise, and we're serving as that curator. That can also build your brand. So that could be a good place to start. But if you're looking to guest post, the first step would be to identify websites that offer guest posting opportunities, and there's different ways to do that. You could do a search online. Like, for example, if you want to write about personal development, you could, search top 100 personal development blogs or top 100 self-help websites, right? People have done that research, and there are lists of top 50, top 100 sites. So that could be a place to get started, or you could ask a friend who has been doing guest posting, like different options for you. A third technique that I have is a follow the leader technique. So like, let's say you are a career expert and, identify 5 other career experts in your industry who have been really getting their name out there. So you have those 5 people's names, and then you start to do research on them. You might put their, name in Google and type in the word interview or guest blog or bio or the word buy or whatever it is. And then you'll you'll see the different types of media they've got, right? Or if you go onto iTunes, you could, go into the podcast section and search for their name, and all the podcasts that they've been featured on iTunes will show up. And so you've got these 5 leaders, and you're kind of making a list of all the media that they've gotten. Then you can go back and look at those media outlets to see if they would also be a fit for you.
I love that. What a hack. And at that point, would they just figure out like who the editor is and email them? I know a lot of this because I own a ghostwriting house called Cake Publishing, named after the fact that I eat a lot of cake. And so we do a lot of this work, but I'm curious for everybody listening, since you're such a genius at this, what would be something approachable, like, so let's say they identify 15 websites that they're like, I want to post a blog on there. Email the editor and pitch them and just letting them know they want to write the piece.
Yeah, I mean, so it depends. Sometimes on the website, they'll have very specific instructions, like, send your submission to this email address. And sometimes I even say, like, we want to see the full guest post written, or, send us 3 story ideas. So they will tell you typically what they're looking for. Now, even if they don't give you a name, I do suggest trying to find the name of someone who works there. So you could go on to, like, say, LinkedIn, and then just do an advanced search for the company name and a keyword, maybe like editor or contributors editor, and see who comes up. And when you start looking at people, there will be something that pops up that says people that viewed this person also viewed that person. And you start discovering, more and more people at that company. But usually if you just spend 10 minutes on LinkedIn, you will be able, or even less, you'll be able to find a name of somebody who works there.
Gosh, LinkedIn is just such a gem. Like, the more I talk about it, the more I love it. Well, this has been amazing. Are there a couple of books, or is there a book you're reading now that you recommend and that you love?
Yeah, I mean, I love books on relationship building. And so 2 of the best books that I've read have been Adam Grant's Give and Take, and also Keith Ferrazzi's Never Eat Alone. So I definitely recommend people check that out.
Amazing. I know Keith, and he is so incredible at what he does. And, final question is just, what is the best advice you've ever gotten in your career?
Yeah, I mean, the best advice I've ever gotten is that your greatest happiness lies on the other side of your greatest fear. And when I think about my career and my business, the only way that I've really gone to the next level is by doing something scary. Yeah. And I'm the kind of person, I feel like the people that are attracted to you actually are also the kind of people that want to reach their full potential in life. They don't want to just, kind of have this mediocre existence. They want to really see what's possible for them. They want to stretch themselves. And it can feel sometimes so terrifying at first and so uncomfortable. But there's that saying, what doesn't kill you only makes you stronger. Right. And yeah, I've always felt better when I've taken those, leaps in my business and my career.
Wonderful. This has been amazing. Where can everybody find you, follow you, learn about you?
Yeah, so they can go to selenasoo.com to learn more about me. It's SELENASOO. And I've got a video training there, which is all about how to connect with VIPs and influencers. And so if they want more training around this, I share 3 of my top strategies to do that. So they can check it out at selenasoo.com.
Thank you so much for being here. I really, really appreciate you. And I know you're busy. Thanks for stopping in your day to be with me.
Yeah, thank you, Ashley.
Yeah. Here, and I am just reflecting on this amazing episode with Selena Soo. She's such an inspiration. She's obviously built herself up just through a career of knowing people and creating relationships that translate into abundance, whether it's PR or business opportunities. And I'm always really inspired by meeting people like her, because I love to be that person in other people's lives. And it's such a gift. You get to connect with people, and the better you learn how to build authentic relationships, the more you can create so much for other people by bringing 2 amazing people together. I mean, I can't tell you how many marriages, best friendships, business deals that I've just accidentally put together because I like to connect people. But I wanted to talk to you now about a thought that was coming up for me. And the thought is around the 3 types of mentors and which one may be, a fit for you. So the first type of mentor that a lot of people don't realize exists is a sponsor. And the biggest difference between a mentor and a sponsor is that while a mentor is going to dole out really good advice for you, sponsors are usually the people that make things happen for you in the workplace. So they're the people who are more action oriented. They're somebody that you want to build a relationship with at work, somebody who has some sort of power. And it doesn't mean that you have to go into that stickiness of getting to know somebody because they're more powerful than you, but it does mean that you want to get curious about who's in your workplace that you can feel an authentic bond with. And that means making an effort to use your lunch breaks to get to know different people. And if you're an introvert or you kind of max out and your lunch breaks are kind of your sacred time, I just recommend setting aside maybe one lunch a week where you make an effort to fill it with somebody at work that you could see as potentially a mentor, a sponsor, or even just a friend. So how do you identify a sponsor that can help make the most valuable connections for your career path? For one hand, if you're in your workplace, you can go around and just try to build that authentic connection. But on the other hand, let's say you're trying to change jobs, you're trying to go somewhere else, and you want to start building a relationship with potential sponsors. I would recommend using social media as a tool to first look at LinkedIn, figure out who is in a position that could really be helpful to you in a company you would love to be in. And then secondly, reach out to them, whether it's through Twitter or other forms of social media or through a direct message on LinkedIn, asking for a cup of coffee over your lunch break, letting them know you're happy to come to them and make yourself available at their convenience. If you make it a commitment on a weekly basis to build a relationship with someone new, it could be so powerful in finding that sponsor for your career. The second type of mentor, and this would be me as a career coach, a business coach, and a life coach, is a paid mentor. I have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars of my own business revenue in paid mentors. There's someone that, you guessed it, they ask for a price in exchange for mentorship. And if you've never worked with a paid mentor before, you're probably going to experience some sort of sticker shock, because my first paid mentor was $10,000 and I sold my car and walked around LA for 6 months until I could afford a new one just to be able to hire her. But it was one of the most powerful decisions that I made in my life, not just because of what I learned from this mentor, but because it was a way of me stepping into my own power and saying, I am willing to invest in me. And if you heard the episode with Benjamin Hardy about how willpower doesn't work, our first episode of the U-Turn podcast, he covers a lot of topics, but one of the topics he covers really well is this idea that the difference between an amateur and a pro is that a pro actually invests money in their dreams. So a paid mentor is an incredible way to do that. And then the third type of mentor is the unpaid mentors. So just because you're getting help for free doesn't mean that unpaid mentors are any less valuable. In fact, it's important to note that mentoring isn't just a one-way street. In the mentor-mentee relationship, there's an obvious flow of benefits being given to the protege as far as, advice and guidance go, but mentors are also gaining advantages in this deal. I can't tell you how many times I would meet with people when I moved to Washington, D.C. and was seeking out my first job in counterterrorism. I remember thinking, what do I have to offer all of these people who are meeting me for coffee? But sure enough, all of these wise, incredible professionals who put their time into cups of coffee and lunch with me, went out of their way to help me, whether it was looking at my resume or recommending me to somebody. The moment I landed foot in my position in management for the Pentagon, I heard from so many of them that needed a contact or needed a meeting at the Pentagon. And I was so happy to help them. And I was so excited to be able to return the favor and to see this as a way of nourishing my network. And like I said with Selena, I never approach somebody without very first thinking, how can I add value to their life? So please know that no matter who you are, no matter what your circumstance, no matter where you are, there is value that you can add. Even if your resume is empty, it won't always be empty. So know that the people who meet with you aren't just investing in who you are today, they're investing in all of the amazing things that you and I both know that you're gonna be. So just some post-episode notes after Selena Soo, and I'm so grateful for you listening, and I can't wait to connect with you on the next episode. Thanks again for tuning into this week's episode of the U-Turn Podcast. We keep really detailed show notes at uturnpodcast.com. So if our guest mentioned a book or a resource that you're interested in, you'll be able to find that there. In the meantime, if you were inspired by this episode, if it made an impact in your life, we would be so grateful if you subscribed and posted a review for us on iTunes. Rumor has it on the street, the more reviews we get, the more subscribes we get, the more we can grow and get our impact out there in the world. In the meantime, I'd love to hear from you at Ashley Stahl on Instagram. I'm so grateful for connecting, and I look forward to next week's episode.